Alright everyone, we start off today talking about the legacy media's sheer number of hot takes with regards to the Bidenomics situation that the Western world finds itself in. I realize that some of it is worldwide economic damage based on lack of trade and production due to lockdowns mainly. You did have some shipping issues as well. You know, when you close your port down because people are coughing too much and you keep it closed for several weeks, shipping tends to slow down a little bit. Now, they probably should have just built their own fucking docks in other states, like really makeshift shit in order to privatize and incentivize expanding shipping to make it even more efficient. But I guess that you need a lot of permits to do that sort of thing these days. Anyway, I wanted to read you a tweet here. I've cut it open. This one's a real humdinger. This comes from Bloomberg Opinion. This is, at first I figured, well, maybe it's a parody account, but they've got the little blue check mark, which means that Twitter actually accepts that they are who they say they are, and endorses their message, by the way. Twitter changing its verification system literally years ago to reflect this, saying, well, we're going to de-verify people if we just don't like what they have to say. We think that they're verboten. But here's what they said, and it has to do with inflation. Inflation stings most if you earn less than $300K. Here's how to deal. Number one, take the bus. Of course, they do not explain about people in small town and rural areas where the buses don't run all day, where there are no buses, etc., and people that are too poor to afford the fucking bus fare. Number two, don't buy in bulk, and I'm thinking to myself, that's actually sort of the opposite of what you should be doing. If you have any expendable income at all, it would be better to buy in bulk cheaply and stock up on like the basic necessities you use regularly. Like maybe you eat rice twice a week. Well, you can buy fucking 50, 100-pound bags of rice a lot cheaper than buying the little like 1 or 2 pound bags in a regular grocery store. Your kids like peanut butter a lot. You have PB&J every other day. You can buy a 12-pack of peanut butter and save 50% off. How would that help you avoid the fallout from inflation? I don't know. Bloomberg doesn't explain it. Number three, and this is very Great Reset-ish, try lentils instead of meat. Now, I like lentils. I really do. I also like other things that have a savory flavor. I can make vegetarian foods using peas, chickpeas, lentils, etc. They're savory, they're filling. You don't need meat with every meal, and a lot of people do eat excessive amounts of meat. Lentil prices will be affected, though. That's number one. Number two, not everyone fucking likes lentils. Number three, this is literally let them eat cake. Well, if you're making too little money, why don't you just try not having the hot dogs? After all, you don't need one. It's very pompous. It's like, yeah, we've got ours. I make $1 million a year, and so I've got this filet mignon here, and it's extra exclusive because now grubby poor people can't afford meat. And so all of the meat sections are removed, and all you have are like rich people butcher stores where they go in and they buy like hogs heads and shit. And number four, nobody said this would be fun. Notably missing from their analysis here any mention of the fact that Joe Biden is mostly responsible for the inflation rate. He is. He has spent enormous amounts of funny money pumping an economy that was already showing signs of strain because of lockdownerism, port closures, etc. You've got a foreign policy nightmare right now that's certainly not helping. I love it when they try to coin the term Putin price hikes. Even if it were only the invasion of Ukraine that were responsible for the economic situation, and it's not, because of course we saw rapidly rising inflation and price hikes and gas prices more than doubling over the course of the prior year anyway. That was before the invasion of Ukraine. But even then, Biden would be partially to blame because his diplomatic fumbling is part of the reason Ukraine got invaded. Putin ultimately carries the responsibility of making the decision to invade, but it's prefaced by a string of failures, partially from the Biden administration, partially from when he was VP, way back in the era in which Crimea was first annexed by the Russians, and sending Kamala to Eastern Europe, destroying the U.S. energy sector in part, which means Russia's like, hey, you know, we have an energy advantage, we sell a lot of stuff. But now we've got even more of an advantage because the U.S. isn't open for business like it was under Trump. Then it was drill, baby, drill. Now it's leave it in the ground and buy an electric vehicle that runs partially on coal. Well, when the U.S. domestic and foreign policy is weak, when it's feeble, people who don't like the U.S. or have competing interests in some way or another are emboldened by that. We've seen this time and time again. We've had presidencies like this before. The Obama presidency. Nobody listened to him, and at the end, the Chinese effectively trolled him on his last state visit by refusing to even receive him with even a fucking diplomat at the airport. And of course, he should have turned around and left immediately and sent a mean letter to Xi Jinping, and maybe they would have said, "Oh, I finally grew some balls. Okay, please come back over. Well, we forgot the marching band the last time. Whoops, it was our mistake." This is, by the way, how East Asian diplomacy tends to work. Not a good idea to suffer a snub and not do anything about it. You can return in kind, or you can prevent it from ever happening. Trump was never snubbed. It's funny because people are saying, well, Biden, there are world leaders that aren't taking his phone calls. Again, an awful lot of things that supposedly were big problems under Donald Trump are actual problems now. Threat of World War III, economic catastrophe, failure in Afghanistan, now failure in Eastern Europe, foreign leaders actually snubbing the president. Supposedly Trump was massively disliked, but even people that disliked him still took his fucking calls. Mainly because they were afraid not to. With Biden, it's a fucking vegetable. Nobody gives a shit about Joe Biden. And these hot takes that I see, this wagon circling from the legacy media is sickening. Now, as a person who has risen up into a considerably higher income bracket than when I was younger, I'm not that far out from it that I can't remember what it's like to be poor. If I'm sitting there, I'm already struggling anyway, and my wages are being pissed away by government policies. Gas prices have soared up out of sight. At some point, I'm not going to be buying lentils because I can't afford the lentils. I'll be living on ramen. And I kind of know what that's like, too, of course. I remember skipping meals. I remember the ramen shuffle and trying to make Campbell's soup taste reasonably edible for 50 cents. I can remember these sorts of things. I have a feeling that a lot of these people don't understand that. They're from the comfortable middle and upper middle class. Their parents were dentists and shit. They got a master's degree in journalism and stuff. It's not cheap. And now they sit in the newsroom. They're kind of making it. They start off probably at $80K a year, most of these people that write these fucking articles. Many of them make six figures. They're using the other person narrative. Read this again. You're suffering. Nobody said it would be fun, they say from their McMansion. They're speaking in the disconnected sense for a reason, because they're not part of that socioeconomic rung. Their staffers might be, though. Their interns are. The janitor that cleans up the shit after Rachel Maddow poops herself for the third time this week, he has to live on a lot less. I guess he won't be eating lentils. Also, the advice here is just screwy. Don't buy in bulk. Yes, you should. You should take advantage of generic alternatives. The best thing you can do if you have enough money to actually invest in doing so is start growing some of your own food. Yes, you can grow lentils too if you really want to. You got a nice yard? You don't have a housing authority? Get some chickens. You can get eggs. You can get fresh meat. Now, those chicken breasts, they're definitely inching upwards in price, although the big one here is definitely beef. Beef is, I would say, twice as fast rising as chicken. Pork, less. I don't know why, but pork products are actually pretty cheap in this country. Some of them cheaper than in the United States. I don't know. I didn't know there was that much domestic pork production in this part of Europe, but apparently it's a thing. And this isn't the only hot take that we've seen of this type. We've seen this from virtually all the legacy media outlets. Biden effectively insinuates the same. First it was there was no inflation. Then it's just minor and transitory. Now it's effectively just fucking shut up and deal with it and change your lifestyle. Yes, it should be that the government changes its strategy so that you don't have to change your lifestyle. You shouldn't have to forego the meat and buy half as much stuff. Materialism, yes, is a big problem, but buying food is not materialism. Buying peanut butter is not a form of materialism. It's called fucking having lunch. If the government had any sense, it'd be telling people, hey, you can slim down your budget by not buying Chinese crap. Buy less of the stuff that you actually don't need. But food is not part of the things that you don't need spectrum. Food is important. Unless you happen to be one of those Hindi gurus who pretends that they can eat sunlight or something like that. Hey, I've got this great new diet. It's called fasting because it's all I can afford under the Biden economy. I'm glad to be sheltered from the worst fallout of this, although I will admit, getting a little bit nervous because as inflation rises in the U.S., it's dragging inflation up in Europe. We haven't even begun to see the price hike effects of that. It's going to get bad. I suggest stocking up. I suggest people here, there's a meme about sunflower oil because Ukraine's a major producer. And there was like a fucking TikTok video or something, someone dressed up as a gangsta and taking sunflower oil and putting it in little plastic baggies and stuff like drugs. I hate to tell you this, but it went beyond the meme because if you look at the oil section, you will notice a little bit of a lack of sunflower oil there. I'm glad that I've got a nice gallon in stock that I got actually due to the last wave of a lockdownerism. I figured, well, you know, I know the seed oil thing, you know, blah, blah, blah. I like butter more, of course, or olive oil, to tell the truth. But it's good to have on hand. Yeah, it won't be cheap anymore. Maybe I can flip that shit and make like 10 extra bucks off of my sunflower stash. But yeah, the legacy media has gone beyond the pale here. Imagine if Trump had spoken this way, or elements of the media that were like pro-Trump, like some of the people at least at Fox, it'd be scathing, the write-ups about them. But Joy Reid tells you to eat cake. CNN, Bloomberg now joining in. Just eat lentils. How many fucking lentils can people eat? Lentil soup is one of my favorite dishes. Liz makes it homemade. It's great. It's even great if you get the canned shit. But I mean, you can't have it all the time. Sometimes you do want to have a hamburger. And as for the vegetarians out there, you know, there are other things other than lentils too. What about maybe some marinated mushrooms? Well, I can't afford the marinade because Biden caused it to spike in price. It contained balsamico from, you know, Russia, and now I can't get it anymore. I have to buy this more expensive alternative. A very large proportion of this is Biden's fault. People will shake their heads and say, no, it's actually Trump. No, it's Putin's fault. No, it's just a thing. I don't know how it's happening. I know nothing about economics, but I'm sure that it's not Joe Biden's involvement. Of course it is. He designs U.S. energy policy. He's been effectively lording over things with the executive order more than anything else. Parsing back virtually all of the very positive deregulation that Trump instituted. And now the legacy media, instead of telling the American people the truth, which is that if you want to solve this, you should kick Biden out of office and get competent leadership, that you should restart the U.S. energy industry, that you should not be getting us involved in adventurism, that you should be encouraging domestic production, that you should tell people if you want to slim down your budget, just stop buying Chinese stuff, and once they're no longer a problem, the world will be a better place. We're doing literally the opposite at the government level, because the government is colluding to grab up money from China. It wants you to sleep in the pod, but it also wants you to keep buying the materialistic crap you don't need. And no, instead, you should go without meals so that you can keep buying the plastic crap and the slave labor-made electronics with Chinese components. That's about all. Peace out.